every year this time of year, we anxiously await this global temperature report. Can you tell me what we have learned about 2023?
Yeah, 2023 was far and away the warmest year we've had in this record. This is a record that dates all the way back to 1880. So we've really we're seeing temperatures rise, and 2023 was the peak of them so far. July was the warmest month that we've had in this record. And if we look at the last 10 years, so the last decade of measurements, the last 10 years have been the warmest 10 years in this record. So we're really just seeing some warm temperatures right now.
Is there any data to look at to talk about when we may have ever seen temperatures this hot ever in the history of Earth?
Yeah, there are some other ways to go back in time and look at some paleoclimate information. But the measurements that started in 1880, now we use over 20,000 measurements of in situ measurements. So this is sensors that are on the land taking measurements of land temperature. We use ships that collect information and also buoys. None of this is coming from satellite data. This is all actual in situ measurements from sensors that are positioned around the landscape to try to get these measurements.
So this is global temperatures. Was there anything that came out of this that told us anything about the United States? Because you said July, and my first thought is all these heat waves that we had in July. So what about a little bit more locally, domestically?
Yeah, so when we think about these temperatures increasing globally, it doesn't mean everyone's going to experience a heat wave all the time. What it means is we're more likely to see greater variability in our climate system and more extreme events or more significant extreme events. So along the east coast of the United States, for example, we had a change in our air quality because of fires in Canada. So as it was warmer and drier in Canada, we had over 18 million hectares of land that burned, and that's the size of North Dakota. And a lot of that smoke ended up here along the East Coast. We think about changes in Florida as well. We had Hurricane Idalia in 2023, where we just saw significant changes to the economy and to the local communities where we had all of this rainfall. And then if we look out in California, we had these atmospheric rivers in early 2023, where we saw just a deluge of water from these storms and increased flooding. But then later in California, we saw a dry spell. So we're seeing just this variability as we look across our country in different ways that climate is changing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even in just the past week, it's been wild. So what can you tell me about the role here of this winter in particular and El Nino in all of this?
Yeah, El Nino is, of course, an important climate interaction that we see happening. So with an El Nino event, this is a warming of our ocean temperatures. And as we see this warming ocean temperature, we see the potential to have more moisture in the atmosphere, which can cause an increase in the storms that we see. Whereas La Nina, we have a cooler ocean temperature and can have cooler global temperatures then as well. But even though the last few years have been La Nina years, we've still seen that these have been the warmest years in our temperature record. But with El Nino now coming in, that's one of the reasons we saw 2023 was such a warm year, and we would expect that we might see warmer years in the next few years as well as El Nino continues.
Okay, so let's talk about NASA, because you guys love to stay ahead of things and have some always fun new projects happening. I heard there's a new satellite being launched. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so NASA has about 20 Earth observing satellites, always giving us data back about the Earth, but we have a new one that's planned to launch in the next month or so. It's called PACE. It's the Plankton, Aerosol, Clouds, and Ecosystem Experiment. And what I really like about PACE is that it's looking at the exchange of carbon dioxide across the oceans and the clouds. And so we're really able to get a picture of this greenhouse gas and how it's changing our climate, both over the oceans and over land. So I'm really excited to see what we can learn from that and how we can put it into our models to help better constrain our models so that we can have better climate measurements even going forward.
Yeah, it always seems like that's the goal. Like, get more data, put it into the models, let's predict the future. Is that always like that end goal that everybody's working towards?
That's always the goal.
Okay, so you mentioned carbon dioxide, but I saw some of your research really focuses on methane. Are there any satellites that have a look at methane from space?
Yeah, there are some ways to look at methane, but that's still something that we're trying to develop even more. So we have some airborne campaigns that are really trying to look at methane. That NASA has some airborne sensors that we're using, and we're testing those out in preparation for future satellite launches that would better understand methane.
Any other fun new projects coming out with NASA?
Well, one project that I'm really excited about, because I'm a fire ecologist at heart and I got my start looking at fires in Alaska. I'm excited about this project called Fire Sense that NASA is working on. And it's a way to better understand the fires that are happening across the western United States. So there are teams of researchers on the ground making measurements. And then there are a number of different airborne sensors that we're flying around across the western United States to compare that data to. And then we're looking at satellite data as a way to kind of bridge these different scales, and what's on the ground, what can we see from the air, and then what can we see from the satellite level. So I'm really excited to see the results of this Fire Sense project.
Wow, very cool. And then going back to the global temperatures real quick, a lot of times I think it can sound very intimidating or doom and gloom to the general public when they hear hottest year on record. And also it may become irrelevant at this point because they've been hearing for the past few years just how hot things are getting. Do you have any advice to offer or words of wisdom for the general public who's taking in this knowledge?
Yeah, this is a question I get a lot, even from my own family. What do we do with this information and how do we move forward from here? And what I try to tell people is that, the first step is really to understand what we're facing and think about how we can work on it together. So I'm a scientist at NASA, but I'm also a mom. And so I talk with my kids about this. And then I also volunteer in my community and I share what I'm learning with my other people in my community. And I think educating ourselves and learning together is the first step in having that conversation to figure out as a community where we want to go from here and what kind of society we want to have and how we can work together to come to some common goals and understanding to move forward in our current system.
Yeah, and a lot of it is about educating those future generations. And you guys have some great resources online, correct, about education?
Yeah, we do. And you can go to nasa.gov/earth and you can learn all about the new climate data. And also there are some resources on there if you hunt around on the website for activities you can do even with kids to learn about climate change and think about how we can all be in this world together.
Awesome. I have a couple of future scientists myself.
There you
Liz
go.
Hoy, thank you so much. I appreciate your time and your expertise and best of luck with the projects coming up.
Thank you so very much. It was great to be here.
Hey, thank you so much for watching. While you're here, check out some other videos you just may like.